A former slot technician who worked inside three major Las Vegas casinos for over 7 years just revealed what really happens the moment you hit a grand jackpot. And I'm telling you right now, what happens behind the scenes is going to completely change how you think about winning big money at slot machines. This information comes directly from someone who was part of the system, who watched this process happen hundreds of times, and who finally decided that players deserve to know the truth about what casinos are doing the second that jackpot music starts playing. I'm going to walk you through 8 specific things that happen after you hit a grand jackpot. And I can promise you that casinos absolutely do not want this information getting out. Because once you understand what's really going on behind those locked machines and inside those surveillance rooms, you'll never look at a jackpot celebration the same way again. But before we get into the technical details of what happens, in those first crucial seconds, I want you to hear about what happened to a woman named Sandra, because her experience is going to help you understand just how overwhelming and confusing this process really is when you're sitting there thinking you just won life-changing money. Sandra was a regular player at a casino in Henderson, Nevada. She'd been playing penny slots for about 3 years, mostly just for entertainment, usually spending maybe $60 or $70 per visit about twice a month. Nothing unusual about her play pattern, nothing that would make her stand out from thousands of other recreational players. She had her favorite machine, a game called Lightning Link, and on this particular Thursday afternoon in March, she was betting 60 cents per spin, just casually playing while waiting for her husband to finish his poker tournament. Then, on one completely random spin, the screen exploded with animations. 15 jackpot symbols landed across the reels. The machine started playing that unmistakable grand jackpot celebration music, the kind that makes everyone within 30 feet turn and look. And there on the screen was the number Sandra had been dreaming about for 3 years, $12,500. According to the former slot technician who shared this story, Sandra's immediate reaction was pure joy, exactly what you'd expect. She actually jumped up from her chair. She pulled out her phone to call her husband. She was shaking with excitement. But then, within maybe 3 or 4 seconds of that jackpot registering, something happened that Sandra wasn't expecting at all. The machine went completely dead. The screen froze on the jackpot amount, but every button became unresponsive. The bill acceptor light went dark. She couldn't cash out. She couldn't do anything. And suddenly, Sandra wasn't feeling excitement anymore. She was feeling confusion, then concern, then genuine anxiety. She sat back down. She pressed buttons that wouldn't respond. She looked around to see if anyone else's machine had gone dark, maybe thinking it was some kind of power issue. But every other machine around her was working perfectly fine. It was just hers. Just the one showing $12,500. This brings us to the first thing that happens after you hit a grand jackpot. And this is something that happens so fast that most players don't even realize it's a deliberate system response. Thing number one, the machine immediately locks and alerts the entire casino. What Sandra didn't know, what most players don't know, is that the moment her jackpot registered, within approximately 1.2 seconds, according to technical documentation from the slot monitoring system, her machine sent an automatic signal to the casino's central server. This isn't a malfunction. This isn't a security precaution in case something goes wrong. This is a programmed, mandatory lockout that happens with every single jackpot over $1,200. The machine's TITO system, that's the ticket and ticket out technology that controls all the cash and credit functions, receives an immediate freeze command from the server. And simultaneously, that same server is sending notifications to multiple departments throughout the entire casino property. Former slot technicians report that within those first few seconds, 6 different groups of people are being notified about Sandra's jackpot. Slot floor attendants get an alert on their handheld devices showing the exact machine number, the jackpot amount, and the location on the casino floor. Floor managers receive the same notification, often on their phones or communication radios. The surveillance room gets an automatic flag in their monitoring system. Casino security is notified because any large cash payout requires security protocol. The casino cage, where they keep the money for payouts, receives advance notice so they can prepare the funds and the tax paperwork. And the compliance department gets flagged because every jackpot over $1,200 requires IRS documentation. All of this is happening while Sandra is sitting there staring at her frozen screen, still trying to process what's going on, not understanding yet that her moment of celebration has just triggered a comprehensive response system that involves dozens of casino employees and multiple layers of verification that she doesn't even know exist. But the machine locking is just the beginning. What happens next involves cameras you didn't even know were watching you, and the level of detail they're reviewing is going to shock you. Thing. Number 2. Surveillance reviews. Every second of your play leading up to the win. While Sandra was sitting at that locked machine, approximately 45 feet above her head and 20 feet to the west, something was happening that she had absolutely no awareness of. Inside the casino's surveillance room, a digital video review was already in progress. A surveillance operator had received the automatic jackpot alert on his monitor, and according to protocols described by former surveillance staff, he immediately pulled up Sandra's machine camera feed and began what's called a pre-jackpot play review. This isn't a quick glance at the winning spin. This is a comprehensive examination of Sandra's entire playing session leading up to that jackpot moment. And based on reports from former operators, this review typically covers 15 to 30 minutes of footage before the jackpot hit. The surveillance system in modern casinos operates like a sophisticated DVR setup with timestamp matching capability. Every slot machine has at least one dedicated camera angle, and higher denomination machines often have 2 or 3 angles covering the screen, the player's hands, and the bill acceptor. When that jackpot alert comes through, the system automatically bookmarks the exact moment of the win, and the operator can instantly scroll backward through the footage, watching Sandra's play in fast forward, slowing down at any moment that looks unusual, and flagging sections for closer review. What are they looking for? According to former surveillance operators, they're checking for any indication of slot fraud, any sign that the machine was malfunctioning, any evidence that the player was exploiting some kind of mechanical anomaly, and any suggestion of collusion with casino staff or other players. Former employees described the specific things that raise red flags during these reviews. They watched to see if the player was tracking the machine's behavior with any kind of recording device or notebook. They look for patterns suggesting the player understands something about the machine's cycle that gives them an unfair advantage. They check whether anyone else approached the machine during the session, which might indicate team play or information sharing. They review whether the player changed their betting pattern in unusual ways right before the jackpot hit. They verify that the player was the one actually pressing the spin button for every play, not using any kind of automated or mechanical assistance. And they watch for any interaction between the player and slot attendants that might suggest the employee tipped off the player about machine status. Now, in Sandra's case, nothing unusual appeared in the review. She'd been playing normally, betting the same 60 cents per spin for about 40 minutes, occasionally checking her phone, taking a sip from her coffee, just standard recreational play behavior. But here's surveillance review so significant. There was a documented case at a major Las Vegas Strip property where a player hit a $50,000 jackpot on a game called Buffalo Grand. The celebration happened, the machine locked, the player was excited. The slot attendant came over to start the verification process. But during the surveillance review, the operator noticed something in the footage from about 12 minutes before the jackpot hit. The player had been keeping a small notebook next to his drink, and several times during his session, he'd written something down after certain spins. The operator flagged this for the shift manager, who requested a longer footage review going back 2 hours. What they discovered was that this player had been tracking the pattern of when the bonus feature triggered, documenting how many base game spins occurred between bonus rounds, and he'd been adjusting his bet amount based on his calculations about when the next bonus cycle might hit. The floor manager called in the casino security team. They approached the player, who was still waiting for his jackpot payment, and asked to speak with him privately. They brought him to a back office, explained that they'd reviewed his play, and showed him screenshots from the surveillance footage showing his notebook and his pattern of bet adjustments. Then they told him something that absolutely devastated him. The jackpot was being denied. According to the casino's policy, any form of advantage play, including tracking machine patterns to inform betting decisions, constitutes a violation of the terms of play. The $50,000 he thought he'd won was voided. He was escorted out of the casino, and his name and photograph were entered into the casino's exclusion database, banning him permanently from the property. Now, the former surveillance operator who shared this case was careful to explain that this kind of detailed pattern tracking is relatively rare, and most players have no idea it's even possible to analyze slot behavior that way. But here's what's important for you to understand. Every single jackpot triggers this surveillance review, and you never know what they might see in that footage that could raise questions about your play. You think you're just sitting there pressing a button, maybe celebrating when you win, maybe sighing when you lose, completely unaware that every gesture, every moment, every decision you make at that machine is being recorded and could potentially be used to evaluate whether you deserve to get paid. And if you think having your recent play scrutinized is invasive, wait until you hear about what they check on your player's card history, because what they can access about your gambling background goes back way further than just today's session. Thing number 3, they pull your entire player's card history instantly. Remember how I mentioned they're looking at more than just that one session? Well, while that surveillance operator was reviewing Sandra's play footage, something else was happening simultaneously at a computer terminal near the slot floor manager's desk. The moment Sandra's jackpot registered in the system, her player's card number was automatically pulled into what's called the Casino Management System, or CMS. And within that system, a data analyst was now looking at every single session Sandra had ever played at that casino property, going back 3 full years. According to former casino hosts who worked directly with this technology, the level of detail available in these player profiles is extraordinary. They can see every session you've played, down to the individual day and time. They can see your average bet per spin. They can see your total coin in, which is the total amount of money you've cycled, through machines over your entire play history. They can see your actual win-loss ratio. They can see how long you typically play per visit. They can see which games you prefer. They can see what denomination you usually play. And most importantly, for their purposes, they can see your theoretical loss, which is the mathematical expectation of how much the casino should have won from you based on your total play volume and the house edge of the games you've chosen. Why does this matter for a jackpot verification? Former compliance officers explain that they're looking for what they call statistical anomalies. They want to know if your jackpot win is consistent with your normal play pattern, or if something about this win seems unusual compared to your historical behavior. Sandra's profile showed exactly what you'd expect from a recreational player. 3 years of twice-monthly visits, consistent 60-cent bets on the same game, total coin-in of approximately $42,000 over that entire period, actual losses of about $3,000, which aligned almost perfectly with the theoretical expectations for her play volume. Nothing about her jackpot raised any statistical red flags. She was a regular, predictable, consistent player who just happened to hit a win that was well within the normal probability range for the game she was playing and the amount of time she'd invested. But here's where this historical data review becomes significant. There was a documented case at a casino in Reno involving a player named Miguel. On a Saturday night in July, Miguel sat down at a machine called Dragon Link, a game he'd never played before according to his player card history. He started betting $9 per spin, which was 3 times higher than any denomination he'd ever played at that property. Within 20 minutes, he hit a grand jackpot worth $25,000. The machine locked, the alerts went out, the surveillance review showed nothing unusual about those 20 minutes of play. But when the floor manager pulled Miguel's complete player history, something immediately stood out. Miguel had been a member of the Players Club for 4 years, but his entire play history showed low denomination penny slot play, never betting more than 60 cents per spin, playing maybe once every 2 months, total coin in over 4 years of less than $8,000. And suddenly, on this one random visit, he's playing a completely different game at a completely different denomination, and he hits a massive jackpot within minutes of sitting down. The floor manager flagged this pattern as statistically anomalous. He requested additional verification procedures. When the slot attendant came to Miguel's machine to begin the payment process, instead of the standard identification check and W2G form preparation, Miguel was asked to provide additional documentation. They requested a secondary form of ID beyond his driver's license. They asked him to verify his social security number verbally before showing his card. They took longer than usual reviewing his identification, comparing the photo to his face multiple times. And during this extended verification process, which took approximately 45 minutes instead of the typical 12 to 15 minutes, Miguel became increasingly uncomfortable. He asked several times why it was taking so long. He was told this was standard procedure for jackpots over $20,000, which wasn't entirely true. The real reason was that his play pattern had triggered additional scrutiny protocols. Eventually, Miguel received his payment. The jackpot was legitimate. There was no fraud. But the experience had transformed what should have been a moment of celebration into nearly an hour of anxiety and confusion, all because the casino's data system had identified his win as outside his normal behavioral pattern. And here's what several former casino hosts emphasized when sharing these types of cases. The system is building a profile of you with every single visit, every single spin, every single card swipe. That profile creates expectations about who you are as a player, and when you deviate from those expectations, even if you're doing absolutely nothing wrong, you become subject to additional layers of investigation that you never agreed to and never knew existed. But the player card history review is just internal casino data. What happens next involves databases that extend far beyond the property you're playing at. And the scope of this background checking is going to disturb you. Thing number 4. They run background checks and cross-reference excluded player lists. This is where the jackpot verification process moves from casino operations into legal compliance territory. And according to former compliance officers, this is the part of the process that has the most potential to completely destroy what should be a winning moment. While Sandra was still sitting at her locked machine, while surveillance was reviewing her play footage, while the data analyst was examining her player history, a third verification process was happening at the casino cage. A compliance officer had received Sandra's identification information through the alert system, and she was now running Sandra's name and driver's license number through multiple databases that cross-reference state and federal lists. This process typically takes between 3 and 7 minutes, according to internal protocol documentation, and during those minutes, they're checking your information against several specific databases. The first database is the State Gaming Commission's self-exclusion list. This is a voluntary program where problem gamblers can add their own names to a list that's supposed to prevent them from entering casinos or collecting jackpots. The second database is the casino's internal exclusion list, which includes people who've been banned from the property for various violations. The third is a multi-state database that some casino corporations share across their properties, flagging players who've been excluded from sister casinos in other jurisdictions. And the fourth, which surprises most people, is the Office of Foreign Assets Control List, or OFAC, which is a federal database of individuals and entities that U.S. businesses are prohibited from engaging in financial transactions with. Casinos are legally required to check large transactions against OFAC lists because of anti-money laundering regulations. In Sandra's case, her name came back clear on all databases. No flags, no issues. Payment approved. But there's a heartbreaking case that former employees specifically mentioned when discussing why this verification step exists and what happens when it reveals a problem. At a casino in Council Bluffs, Iowa, a man in his late 50s hit a $40,000 jackpot on a game called Ultimate Firelink. He was playing with his adult son who had driven him to the casino for what was supposed to be a celebratory birthday outing. When the jackpot hit, they both started celebrating. The son was recording video on his phone. The father was laughing and hugging strangers nearby. It was a genuinely joyful moment. But when the compliance officer ran the father's identification through the database checks, something appeared that changed everything. His name was on the state self-exclusion list. According to the former compliance officer who processed this case, the father's wife had added him to the self exclusion program 8 years earlier during a period when his gambling had created serious financial problems for their family. He'd agreed to the exclusion at the time, but that was 8 years ago. He'd convinced himself that he had his gambling under control now. He'd been visiting this casino regularly for the past 6 months, using his player's card, playing slots 2 or 3 times a month. And the casino's systems had never flagged him because their facial recognition software hadn't matched his current appearance to the photograph on file from 8 years earlier. But now, with a $40,000 jackpot requiring identity verification, the database check revealed his excluded status. The floor manager had to come to the machine and deliver the news. The jackpot was void. Not only would he not receive the $40,000, but he was being permanently banned from the property for violating his self exclusion agreement. Casino security escorted him and his son out of the building, and here's the cruel irony that several former employees mentioned when sharing this story. The man had probably lost somewhere between $15,000 and $20,000 at that casino over the previous 6 months of play that he was never supposed to be doing in the first place. So the casino had accepted his money for months, but the moment he won, they used the same system that should have prevented him from playing to deny him his winnings. Technically, the casino wasn't supposed to have let him play at all, but in practice, he'd been losing money to them for months, with no intervention until the instant he became a liability instead of a revenue source. And here's where casino psychology becomes really sophisticated, because what I'm about to explain represents decades of calculated behavioral research that casinos have invested in to maximize the chances that your jackpot money ends up right back in their machines. Thing number 5, they control how they give you the money to influence your next decision. When Sandra finally received her payment after about 18 minutes of waiting at that locked machine, the slot attendant who brought her paperwork presented her with what seemed like a simple courtesy question. He asked her how she'd like to receive her $12,500. He explained she had 3 options. She could take it as cash, she could take it as a check, or she could have it loaded onto her player's card as casino credits. The attendant mentioned that most people prefer cash for amounts under $15,000 because it's immediate and feels more real, but that the choice was entirely up to her. Sandra chose cash. She signed the W-2G form acknowledging the taxable jackpot. And about 7 minutes later, the attendant returned with a security officer and handed Sandra a yellow envelope containing $100 $2,500 bills. What Sandra didn't realize was that the recommendation toward cash wasn't random helpful advice. According to former cage supervisors who've shared internal training documentation, slot attendants and floor managers are actually coached to guide winners toward specific payment options based on the jackpot amount. And these recommendations are rooted entirely in casino psychology research about which payment methods are most likely to result in continued play. For jackpots between $1,200 and $3,000, employees are encouraged to suggest cash unless the player specifically requests otherwise. The reasoning, based on internal training materials from multiple casino corporations, is that cash in your hand creates a powerful psychological effect. It feels tangible, it feels real, it feels like money you can spend. But it also feels less permanent than money deposited in a bank account. Industry analysis data suggests that players who receive jackpot payments in cash are approximately 40% more likely to continue playing immediately compared to players who take checks or loaded credits. But here's where the payment method manipulation gets even more calculated. For larger jackpots, specifically amounts over $10,000, former cage workers report that the training actually reverses. For these bigger wins, employees are trained to recommend checks rather than cash, and they're given specific language to use in making this recommendation. They mention that a check is more secure than carrying large amounts of cash through the casino. They suggest that a check feels more legitimate, more like real money that you'll want to deposit responsibly. They emphasize that you don't want to be walking around with $10,000 or $15,000 in your pocket. And on the surface, this advice sounds reasonable and protective. But according to former floor managers who've explained the actual strategy behind this recommendation, the real psychological calculation is completely different. When you receive a large jackpot as a check, you're holding a piece of paper that represents money but isn't immediately spendable. That check needs to be deposited or cashed, which means visiting a bank, which means leaving the casino, which creates a natural break in your gambling session. And that pause, that interruption in the momentum of play, should theoretically protect your winnings. But here's what the casino knows from years of tracking player behavior after large jackpots: a check takes time to process. And while you're still physically in the casino building, with that check in your wallet or purse, your brain is already starting to categorize that money differently than the cash you came in with. Former floor managers estimate that 30 to 40% of players who receive checks for jackpots over $10,000 will continue playing with whatever remaining casino balance they have on their player's card or in their pocket. They'll tell themselves they're just playing with the original money they brought, not touching the jackpot winnings. But the presence of that check creates what behavioral psychologists call a wealth effect. You feel richer. You feel like you can afford to take more risks. You feel like you're playing with house money, even though technically you're still spending your own funds. And in a significant percentage of cases tracked by casino analytics departments, players who receive large jackpot checks will return to the casino within 24 to 48 hours after cashing those checks, often bringing substantial portions of the jackpot money back with them. But the most psychologically insidious payment option, according to every former slot attendant and floor manager I've heard from, is the loaded player's card or Taito ticket option. When your jackpot is converted into casino credits rather than cash or check, something fundamental changes about how your brain processes that money. It's no longer currency, it's credits. It's numbers on a screen. It's points in a system. And that psychological transformation dramatically increases the likelihood of immediate reinvestment into machines. Former slot attendants report that players who choose to take jackpots as loaded credits or Taito tickets put an average of 45% of those winnings back into slot machines within 1 hour of receiving the payment. The friction of having to cash out, of having to make a conscious decision to convert credits back into money, creates just enough psychological barrier that many players simply continue playing, telling themselves they'll cash out later, they'll stop when they hit a certain amount, they'll quit after just a few more spins. There's a specific case that multiple former employees referenced when discussing how devastating this payment method option can be. A woman named Jennifer hit a $15,000 jackpot at a property on the Las Vegas Strip. When the cage worker processing her payment explained the three options, Jennifer asked which was most convenient. The employee, following the training protocol for players who seem uncertain, mentioned that the loaded player's card option was the most secure because she wouldn't have to carry cash or worry about losing a check. Jennifer agreed. Her $15,000 was converted into casino credits, loaded onto her player's card. She went to the casino restaurant for dinner, celebrating with her husband, genuinely happy about the win. After dinner, she decided to play a little more, just for fun, just to enjoy the excitement. Within 3 hours, Jennifer had put $8,000 of her jackpot back into various slot machines across the casino floor. She still left with $7,000, which she convinced herself was still a great win. But she'd also received a W-2G form for the full $15,000, which meant she owed taxes on money she'd already given, back to the casino. And according to the floor manager who tracked her play that night, Jennifer never realized that the payment method recommendation she'd received wasn't about her security or convenience. It was about maximizing the probability that she'd continue playing. But there's one more layer to this payment manipulation that extends far beyond the moment you walk away from the cage window. And this is where casino marketing systems become genuinely dystopian in their sophistication. Thing number 6. Your player status and future offers are immediately recalculated based on your win. Sandra took her cash, thanked the slot attendant, found her husband at the poker room, and left the casino feeling genuinely happy about her $12,500 win. What she didn't know was that in the 48 hours following her jackpot, her player profile was being analyzed by the casino's algorithmic marketing system, and decisions were being made about her future relationship with that property based entirely on the fact that she'd taken money out of their ecosystem. According to former casino hosts who worked directly with these customer relationship management systems, the moment a jackpot is paid, The casino management software automatically recalculates something called your theoretical value. And this recalculation can have immediate and long lasting effects on how the casino treats you going forward. Theoretical value is the amount the casino expects to win from you over time based on your play patterns, your average bet, your game selection, and the mathematical house edge built into those games. When you're a regular player who loses consistently, even small amounts, your theoretical value remains positive from the casino's perspective. You're profitable. You're worth investing in through comps and promotional offers and host attention. But the instant you hit a significant jackpot, your actual win-loss ratio shifts dramatically. You're no longer in the red. You've taken money from the casino. And the algorithmic system that determines your marketing value immediately recognizes this change. Former data analysts who worked in casino marketing departments report that players who hit jackpots over $10,000 frequently see their promotional offers decrease over the following months, sometimes dramatically, because the algorithm has determined that you're no longer as profitable as you were before the win. There's a particularly revealing case involving a player named David who'd been a platinum level member of a major casino's players club for nearly 6 years. David visited his local casino property approximately once a month, typically playing dollar denomination slots for 3 to 4 hours per visit, averaging about $5,000 in total coin-in per trip. His theoretical loss based on his game choices and betting patterns was calculated at about $300 to $400 per visit. Over 6 years, David had generated substantial theoretical value for the casino. He received regular offers for complimentary hotel rooms, free play credits, invitations to special events, and personalized attention from casino hosts who'd call him before major promotional weekends. He was, by every measure the casino used, a valuable and profitable customer. Then, on a Wednesday evening in October, David hit a $35,000 grand jackpot on Ultimate Firelink. The celebration happened. The verification process proceeded normally. David received his check, deposited it the following day, and continued his regular monthly casino visits with the same play patterns he'd maintained for years. But within 8 weeks, David noticed something had changed. His monthly promotional mailers, which used to include offers for 2 complimentary nights in a premium room, started arriving with smaller offers. 1 free night instead of 2. Discounted rooms instead of complimentary. His free play offers, which had typically been $60 to $80 per month, dropped to $30 or $40. The personalized phone calls from his casino host stopped entirely. When David called to ask about upcoming promotions, he was told his host had been reassigned and he'd been moved to a different tier of service. His Players Club status remained platinum based on his points, but the actual tangible benefits he received had been significantly reduced. David was confused and frustrated. His play patterns hadn't changed at all. He was visiting the same frequency, playing the same games, betting the same amounts. But according to the former casino host who shared this case, David's theoretical value calculation had been fundamentally altered by that $35,000 jackpot. The casino's revenue management system had done the math, and here's what it determined. Even though David continued playing with his normal patterns, he was now ahead of the house by approximately $30,000 when his total lifetime wins and losses were calculated. The algorithmic system essentially projected how many future visits at his current theoretical loss rate would be required before the casino recouped that jackpot payment. If David's average theoretical loss was $350 per visit, and he was now ahead by $30,000, the system calculated that David would need to visit approximately 85 more times before he returned to being a net loss player from the casino's perspective. And during that recapture period, which could extend for years based on his visit frequency, the marketing algorithm automatically reduced his comp offers to levels more appropriate for his new calculated value. The casino was still happy to have David as a customer. They weren't banning him or excluding him, but they were no longer investing marketing dollars in a player who, according to their data models, had already extracted significant value from their property. Former casino hosts who've shared these types of cases emphasize that this isn't personal vindictiveness from casino management. It's pure algorithmic calculation. The system doesn't care about your loyalty or your history or your emotional connection to the property. It cares about one number, your net theoretical value to the casino's revenue stream. And the moment a jackpot shifts that number into negative territory, your treatment changes accordingly. Now, there is one significant exception to this recalculation pattern. High level players who bet hundreds of dollars per spin, who generate tens of thousands in theoretical loss per visit, who maintain credit lines with the casino, these players can absorb even a $100,000 jackpot without seeing their comp offers reduced. Their theoretical value is so substantial that even a massive jackpot win is just a temporary variance in an otherwise profitable relationship. But for the average recreational player betting $2 to $5 per spin, a grand jackpot of $20,000 or $30,000 can fundamentally alter your status in the casino's eyes for years to come. You won, but in the casino's database, you became less valuable the moment that jackpot registered. And this brings us to the final thing that happens after a grand jackpot. And I'm telling you right now, this one is going to disturb you more than anything else we've discussed because what I'm about to reveal represents a level of permanent surveillance and data tracking that most players have absolutely no idea exists. Thing number 7, you're permanently marked in facial recognition and inter-casino databases. This final revelation is the one that former surveillance operators specifically said they felt uncomfortable participating in. And once you understand the scope and permanence of this tracking system, you'll see why. The moment Sandra's jackpot was verified and paid, something happened that will follow her for potentially the rest of her life. Her photograph from her driver's license, combined with live surveillance footage captured during her jackpot verification, was automatically uploaded into the casino's facial recognition database, with a specific tag marking her as a verified jackpot winner. This isn't a temporary notation that gets deleted after some review period. According to former surveillance operators who worked directly with these biometric systems, this facial recognition profile linked permanently to your identification documents, your home address, your date of birth, your social security number, and the specific details of your jackpot amount and date, becomes part of a database that casino corporations maintain indefinitely. And the scope of how this data is used and shared extends far beyond the single property where you won. Modern casino facial recognition technology creates what's called a biometric signature based on the unique mathematical measurements of your facial features. The distance between your eyes, the shape of your jawline, the position of your cheekbones. All of these measurements are converted into a numerical code that can identify you, even if your appearance changes over time, even if you grow a beard or lose weight or age 10 years. Former security consultants who helped implement these systems at major casino properties report that the software can match faces with approximately 94 to 97% accuracy under normal casino lighting conditions. And the moment you're entered into this database as a jackpot winner, that biometric signature becomes linked to what former surveillance staff describe as a comprehensive player intelligence file. Your face becomes a key that unlocks your entire gambling history across every property in that casino corporation's network. What makes this particularly invasive is the scope of database sharing that happens across properties owned by the same casino corporation. Reports from former casino security directors indicate that major gaming companies like Caesars Entertainment, which operates over 50 properties across multiple states, maintains centralized facial recognition databases that are accessible to surveillance rooms at all of their sister casinos. This means if you hit a grand jackpot at a Caesars property in Las Vegas, your biometric profile and jackpot history could theoretically be flagged by facial recognition systems at Caesars properties in Atlantic City, New Orleans, Lake Tahoe, or any other location in their network. And this tracking happens automatically without your knowledge, without your explicit consent, beyond the fine print in the player's club terms of service that virtually no one ever reads. There's a documented case that perfectly illustrates how this inter-property facial recognition tracking actually functions in practice. A man named Michael hit a $50,000 jackpot at Harrah's Las Vegas on a Saturday night in April. The standard verification process happened. He received his check. He was entered into the facial recognition database with his jackpot details. 6 months later, in October, Michael decided to visit Harrah's Resort Atlantic City while on a business trip to the East Coast. He'd never been to that property before. He hadn't made a reservation. He simply walked in off the boardwalk on a Tuesday afternoon, found a bank of slot machines near the entrance, sat down, inserted a $20 bill, and started playing. Within approximately 20 minutes of his arrival, according to the former casino host who shared this case, a floor manager approached Michael by name, welcomed him to the property, mentioned his previous jackpot win at the Las Vegas location 6 months earlier, and offered him a complimentary room upgrade for that night if he wanted to stay over. On the surface, Michael was impressed. He thought this was exceptional customer service, evidence that the casino really valued their players and tracked their loyalty across properties. He accepted the room upgrade. He played for several more hours that evening. He came back the following day before his flight home. But what Michael didn't realize was that his friendly welcome wasn't the result of attentive staff recognizing a valued guest. It was the result of the facial recognition system, identifying his biometric signature the moment he walked through the casino entrance, automatically pulling his complete player profile from the centralized database, flagging him as a previous $50,000 jackpot winner, and sending an alert to the floor manager's mobile device that a high-value player had just entered the property. The host already knew Michael's jackpot amount, his preferred games, his average bet size, his theoretical value calculation, and his complete play history across all Caesars Entertainment properties. The room upgrade wasn't generosity. It was a calculated reinvestment marketing tactic triggered automatically by surveillance technology. But the implications of this permanent biometric tracking extend far beyond targeted marketing. Former compliance officers express serious concerns about the security vulnerabilities created by these comprehensive databases. If a casino's facial recognition system were ever breached by hackers, which has happened to other types of corporate databases countless times, the attackers would have access to photographs, biometric data, home addresses, identification numbers, and detailed records of who has won large amounts of money and when. Several former employees mentioned being aware of cases where jackpot winners were approached outside casinos by individuals who somehow knew they'd recently won substantial amounts. And while it was never definitively proven that this information came from leaked casino databases, the suspicious timing raised questions about how these criminals identified their targets. The casino industry will tell you their security is impenetrable, but former IT security staff point out that these databases exist on networks that are accessed daily by dozens of employees across multiple departments and properties, creating numerous potential vulnerability points. And here's the scope that should genuinely concern anyone who's ever hit a reportable jackpot. According to gaming industry analysis, casinos across the United States process approximately 2.3 million taxable jackpots every year. That's 2.3 million individual records created. Annually, each containing your photograph, your identification details, your biometric facial signature, and your financial information, all stored indefinitely in systems with unclear oversight and virtually no regulatory restrictions on how that data can be used or shared. Former surveillance operators report that some casino corporations have language in their players' club agreements that allows them to share relevant player information with business partners. But business partners is never specifically defined, and relevant information can include biometric data. The consent you gave when you signed up for that player's card years ago might have authorized facial recognition tracking and data sharing that you never understood you were agreeing to. So let me just recap what we've covered here, because this is information that fundamentally changes how you should think about jackpots. When you hit what seems like a life-changing win, within 90 seconds you've been flagged, recorded, investigated, categorized, and permanently documented. Your moment of celebration has triggered a comprehensive response system involving surveillance review, background checks, database cross-referencing, algorithmic recalculation of your player value, and biometric enrollment that will follow you across properties and potentially for the rest of your life. Everything I've shared comes from documented reports, former employee testimonies, and internal casino protocols that most players never know exist. Obviously, not every detail applies identically at every property. Some casinos have more sophisticated systems, some less. But according to former slot technicians, surveillance operators, and casino hosts, this is the reality of what happens behind the scenes at major casino properties when you hit a grand jackpot. But there's one final thing I haven't told you yet, something that former casino managers specifically asked me not to share publicly. After you hit a grand jackpot over $25,000, within 24 hours, there's a meeting that happens. Former floor managers report that surveillance staff, slot operations, casino hosts, and property management gather to review your complete profile and discuss a specific question. Should this player be classified as a reinvestment target or loss mitigation? Reinvestment targets are players the casino believes will return the money, players who show psychological patterns suggesting they will keep gambling. These players receive aggressive promotional offers designed to bring them back quickly. Loss mitigation players are those the casino believes won't return or will significantly reduce their play. These players receive minimal marketing because the casino has essentially written them off. The decision is based entirely on psychological profiling. Your behavior during the win, whether you continued playing after, what you said to staff, your emotional state, all of this gets documented and analyzed. Former hosts describe a woman who hit $75,000, immediately requested a check, told the attendant she was finally done with slots and never used her card again. She was marked loss mitigation. Her offer stopped within a month. Another player hit $60,000, took it as credits, played another hour, talked excitedly about his luck continuing. He was marked reinvestment target and received escalating promotions for 6 months. According to the manager who shared this, that player returned twice monthly and put approximately $40,000 back into the casino over the following year. The casino paid $60,000 but recaptured $40,000 plus additional theoretical win from continued play. And it all started with that meeting where they profiled his psychology and predicted his behavior. Now you know what really happens behind the scenes, and knowledge is power. If this information changed how you think about casino jackpots, please subscribe because I have more insider revelations you won't find anywhere else. Let me know in the comments. Did any of this surprise you? What would you do differently now if you hit a grand jackpot? Your comments help this reach more people who need to understand what happens behind the casino curtain. Thanks for watching, and remember, the house always knows more than they are telling you.